everyone, my name is Kudzie Mapiye, and on this channel I do videos about my life living here in Australia, and I also share different life lessons that I've learned along the way. Today I'm going to be talking about how Australia has changed me. Sometimes I know, as people, sometimes you think you're stuck in your ways and that you'll never change, but I have discovered that Australia has really changed me. And there is one particular area in which it has changed me that I wanted to share with you. And it's in the area of, it's relating to my kids. And, I had my first son 8 years ago in Australia. And as you can imagine, as a new mother, you are just overwhelmed by absolutely everything. So when I had my son here in Australia for the first time, the only thing that I knew was how I had been raised. And that was obviously in Zimbabwe. I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. I came to Australia when I was already an adult. So, all my childhood memories, I have them from Zimbabwe, and I myself come from a family of 6 children. We had 6 children in the household that I grew up in, and I'm like in the middle. I'm number what am I? I forget. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm number 4 of 6. So, I'm kind of like a middle child. So I kind of saw the experiences of the older children, and I also saw the experiences of my younger siblings. So I have 2 younger siblings, and I remember in the youngest of my siblings in particular, I kind of played quite an active role in some of the things that pertained to her, her needs. And growing up, I remember I used to feed her food. I used to feed her cereal. I used to change her diaper. I used to change her clothes, play with her. I had exposure to what it takes to raise a child and what a child needs. And for me, I think that's the beauty of growing up in Zimbabwe, in that, if you're coming from a large family, in my culture, it's really about the older children helping out with the younger siblings. So you don't have older siblings just, doing their own thing and letting their younger siblings be raised by their parents alone. The older siblings become kind of like mini parents. And what I found beneficial about that, it gives you so much life experience. I mean, when my sister was born, I think I was 8 years old. I mean, I wouldn't have been a mom at 8. And by the time she was 2, I was 10. And I was starting to help out with a lot of the things that she needed. And, I had a lot of experience. So with that background, when I had my son, I thought that, I was born to be a mother. I thought I came equipped to be a mother. And I got a very rude awakening, because I soon realized that, being a sibling who helps out with a little sister is very different from being a mother who's the primary carer of the child. Those two are very different. And even if you're an auntie, I've seen some aunties thinking they can be good parents because they've raised their nephews and nieces. It is very different. The emotional attachment is different. The level of investment is different when it comes to your own child. So when it came to my son, I knew that, I from what I had seen with my sisters growing up and other children in Zimbabwe, kids used to stay in the house when they're fresh newborns. They weren't allowed to go outside until their little belly button thingy falls off. That was usually the signal that they're ready to go out into the world. And that was mainly to, preserve their, immunity, their immune system and stuff like that, and not expose them to too many things outdoors. And if they did go outdoors, even indoors, they would have a hat. They'll be all wrapped up in shawls and towels and wrappers. There'll be little cocoons. A baby was always in this little cocoon, all wrapped up. So that's the experience that I had with children, and that you kind of you know, you're very careful with kids because they could fall over, like they could get hurt very easily and stuff. And I got introduced to a group of mothers. I've spoken about, you know, mothers groups in a previous video, about my life here in Australia, about joining a mothers group as a new mom. I joined a mothers group, and these women had young children, all the same age as my son. So I joined that group when my son was 8 weeks old. And I tell you, it changed me like totally. The way I was raising my son up until that point, the first 8 weeks of my son's life were very cocooned. Like, and I'm sure if I hadn't met those ladies, and they were all Australian ladies, like, you know, my life would have been very different, like raising my son. Firstly, I was very risk averse, and that's because I come from a very risk averse family, not family, like culture. Zimbabwe is a very risk averse culture. We don't really promote like thrill sports. I mean, not that people don't do them, but it's not a big thing in our culture to go like bungee jumping or to go, I don't know, do things that are really risky and out there. We are more conservative people. We are more a conservative culture. So that's what I am like. That was what I was originally like. And that was how I was raising my son. So even like when it came to like food he was eating, like I was very conservative and didn't want to introduce him to too many things. Most babies in Zimbabwe, they'll eat like Cerelac for a long time, like, you know, and then they'll get other foods introduced to them. And it's never like a whole lot of foods all at the same time. And they don't really self-feed very early, like they do it eventually, but I found that, you know, Australian babies do it way sooner. Now I'll share a few examples from this group of ladies that really changed my approach. Firstly, number one was when it came to water. I myself am a true African when it comes to water. Like me and water, like we don't have that kind of relationship. Like we're not close. I'm the kind of person who likes to just stare at the water and not jump into the water. You know what I mean? So it was the same, like, you know, when I came to my son, we would go and do different things with these ladies. And one of the times was, you know, we went to the beach with the kids. And at this time, my son was just over a year old. Like he had just started walking. He was just over a year old. And so we went to the beach, and, you know, I thought that we are going to the beach, like it was a play date. So I was thinking we're going to the beach just to like sit around, because there was a park at the beach. Like we'd play with the kids at the park and then have a few snacks and go home. To my surprise, like we were there to really swim like this. And when I say the beach, it was like, it's a beach in like a suburban type of area. So it wasn't like we drove to the beach. It was close to where we lived. So I just thought we're mainly there for the park. So I didn't pack like, you know, any swimming things for my son. So one of the ladies, like when they went into swimming, they started swimming with their kids, like they all had their swimwear and stuff, and they went into the water. And these people were going deep, 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 deep into the water. And my heart was just going, it's like, oh my gosh, they're gonna drown. But anyway, they're used to it, I guess. But, you know, the African in me was just standing on the sand, like observing with my son by my side. And then one of the ladies said, like, can I take him for a swim? And I'm like, you know, he doesn't have his swim gear. He's like, no, that's fine. Like, you know, just put him in his like shorts. So we just took off his top. He went in his shorts. She went into the water with him. And I was just holding my heart in my hands as I saw them go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the ocean. I was like, oh my goodness, what if I lose my son? Like, what am I doing? But they really helped me to get out of my comfort zone. So to speak. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so new. And she took him into the water. They had a swim and he enjoyed it. And then afterwards, like all the kids were just there, and, you know, their clothes were wet, and then they just took off their clothes. And this, by the way, was like a private, like little beach like little beachfront space. So it wasn't like the main beach where there's a lot of people. It was only us moms and the kids in that little spot. So after the kids came out of the water, they just took off all their clothes. Like, I mean, like, you know, they took off their clothes and they were just, and they're just kids, you know, they're just running around, like drying up because it was a really sunny day. And I could see, like, I actually have a photo of my son, which I will not share, of course, but he was at the ocean, like, you know, in his little birthday suit and just running around in this, like, you know, feeling the sand, having a good old time. And I was just watching and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I would not have done this by myself. Like, this is really out of my comfort zone. But it gave me so much joy to watch my son, you know, enjoying himself like that. And, you know, the other things that we used to do, like go to parks, and there's some equipment, like I always used to stay in like the toddler area, and they would go to like bigger kids area with little kids, like with toddlers, and they would be like climbing rocks and all that. And I just, you know, learned to let go of my son to enjoy fun with other kids. And I saw him enjoying those activities and, you know, just getting out there. And also, I was someone who, with my son, I always liked to stay indoors with him. Like, it was always, we're staying indoors. We're not doing much because I didn't want to get him cold. I didn't want to get him too exposed to a lot of things. But these ladies really helped me to expose, you know, my son to a lot of activities when he was young, and to, you know, get him to play things. And it really changed me by opening up my mind and really making me see that you can learn a lot from other people. And I think that's such a valuable lesson, because sometimes we think learning a lot from people means abandoning yourself. So I think with my son, there were some things from my Zimbabwean culture which to this day we still hold on to and we still instill in him. And there are such valuable things that we don't want to lose, those, you know, cultural things. And there are also Australian things that he has, you know, taken on. And so he's, you know, kind of like got exposure of both. And it's really good to do that. And the other thing in this lesson is that the people that you expose yourself to will help you learn different things. So because this group of mothers were different from me, they had different backgrounds, they had been raised differently, they were able to teach me some things. And I was also able to teach them some things as well. So it was like, you know, a lot of sharing. We used to share a lot of information with each other. Like, I know I used to share a lot of home remedies, because growing up, there were a lot of home remedies for kids. Like things like if their tummy is upset or they've got reflux, like what are some of the home remedies that are safer that you can do with kids to reduce those symptoms. And it really helped, like, you know, it helped some of those kids as well. So there's always a lot to share. It's always good to be open-minded. It's always good to expose yourself to different kinds of people who don't have a similar background, because that's how you learn and grow. And when you learn and grow, you obviously change. You change because you've opened up your mind, but change doesn't mean abandoning what you've known at the same time. So even though like Australia has changed me so much when it comes to raising kids, I am still very much influenced by my Zimbabwean background, my Zimbabwean upbringing, and the things that I saw growing up. And I now just mix those two together, and, you know, I feel like I create a more holistic human being, because after all, I'm raising my son in Australia, and, you know, he does visit Zimbabwe, so he needs to be able to kind of adapt to both environments. So I was really grateful for those lessons and grateful for those ladies. And I would advise any new mom who's raising a child, you know, outside of their country, to just, you know, really connect with people, different types of people in that environment that you're in. You'll really see that you'll enrich your experience as a parent, and your child will have more enriching experiences and more fun memories of them growing up. Because that was one thing I was afraid of, that I have such pleasant memories of growing up, because, you know, I had a lot of siblings. We always used to get up to a lot, like it was always something happening, and I was afraid that my son wouldn't have that type of experience, but by exposing him to other people. And even though then he was an only child, he still had, you know, tried to give him that exposure and that kind of childhood by, you know, meeting other people. So yeah, that's what I learned from other people and how I managed to change and grow and evolve as a parent. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.